Amen. Hello, everyone. Nice to have you all here for this World Food Forum session, exchanging with a parliamentarian. As we have been informed in the chat, MEP Kokkalis is having some delay, but in order for us to start this exchange, I want to remind you of a few good practices. This is a meeting Zoom, so that means that we can all see one another, which is very cool. So if you are in a situation where you can turn your camera on, please do. That way we have a more lively interaction. As for the way this session will be carried on, I am Jovana Trajkovic. I will be your moderator today. I am a volunteer with the World Food Forum. And we have planned this wonderful exchange. So the idea is to have a small presentation of Mr. Kokkalis' involvement in climate action and different forums and different platforms over the world, but also to take into account your opinions. So it's a two-way dialogue, and that's why we want this to be as interactive as possible. Please be polite, mindful of everyone's time, be short and concise if you can, and introduce yourself in the chat, interact in the chat. I will be honored to facilitate this session and make sure that all your questions are arriving to MEP Kokkalis. And in the same time, you will be able also to unmute yourself and to say your question if you are in a position where you can. There is no translation for this session, but I hope that we will have the best exchanges. This is an inclusive platform. Feel free to express your opinions. Thank you, everyone. So MEP Kokkalis has joined us. As I finish my part of this discussion, let's maybe jump right into it and have maybe your presentation, Mr. Kokkalis, directly.
Yes, hello. Hello, Jovana. Hello, everybody. And thank you for having me here in this dialogue. I thought I would just make a short introduction into who I am and what I do, and then we can have a dialogue which is much more meaningful. I'm a Greek member of the European Parliament. I sit with the left, the group of the European left, and I am a member in two committees of the Committee of the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, and also for Agriculture and Rural and Development Committee. I was a rapporteur and took part in the trilogue negotiation on the reform of the EU Common Agricultural Policy, and submitted many amendments towards a greener and more inclusive CAP and a common agricultural policy that is streamlined with the European Green Deal. I had the opportunity to host an independent food systems summit dialogue on the side of Food Systems Summit 2021 of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, which was unfortunately the only such dialogue that was organized in Greece, and it was focused on the 5 action streams of the UNFSS on the food labeling and front of package labeling. And also supporting this, a study on EU-wide food labeling on nutrition and eco-label scheme was conducted by the left, trying to capture the importance of climate, environmental and social effects on food products that we buy, not only nutritional, but also social and environmental. I'm a member of the European Food Forum, and I had the opportunity to speak at many events on food system, on nutrition and sustainable diets. I'm also a member of the Parliamentary Alliance against Hunger and Malnutrition of FIO, which is a platform for policy dialogue among all parliamentarians. And I will also, as a member of the ENVI, take part in the UN Climate Change Conference in COP26 in Glasgow in about a month, representing the left in the mission of the European Parliament. So my expectation from this event is to have a lively dialogue with young people and listen to ideas and experience regarding food system transformation, and see how these ideas can contribute to relevant parliamentary action and policy making.
Let's go back from You were involved in many different projects involving food labels, many different committees. Please, from my own point of view, I think that the interaction, I would like to know, for instance, the youth interactions you have, like how in your daily job you take into account youth problematics or youth voices. Maybe we can start off the conversation around this, and we will put the recording online and see how we can get as many interaction from there on.
Okay, so this is an easy and sad answer. That is that we take under consideration the youth problematic only so long as it reaches us. We do not have a very serious outreach condition that we can reach out to young people. Given our duties and the amount of work that we have to be doing, it's very difficult to go out and get information. I had the opportunity to host an independent food summit, food system summit dialogue, and there were a lot of young people involved, but mostly we have to guess. So what is really important for young people is to get organized, is to get into some form of a collective voice. In that way, they can reach us. It's almost impossible in this this democratic system to reach out to individual people. So we can only get in touch with the youth organizations. And they were very critical in getting this parliament elected, mostly through the climate action platform of Fridays for Future. But on the issue of the food, we don't get that much. And
how would you now, like, have you maybe been familiar with the discussion that has been going with the World Food Forum and this platform, the mechanism we are trying to put in place? Does it echo maybe on a local level as a Greek person, but on a European level, regional level? Is there such mechanism that exists? And how would you think we could create a better dialogue between what's discussed here at this level and to localize it or regionalize it? Because this was one of the issues that was raised during our opening statement and presentation of all the beautiful things we would like to put into place.
Well, this is why I am very interested in having this discussion, because this gives me a rare opportunity to listen to young people's voices directly. Now, on the local level, we are doing a lot of work in the CAP, and it's always a part of the Common Agricultural Policy to encourage A, that young people do not leave the countryside, and B, that young people from the cities return to the countryside and take up agricultural and food systems, related activities. This has not been always that successful. But we have been organizing this dialogue through local associations of young farmers.
So thank you very much, Mr. Kokkalis. I see that people are reacting a little bit in the chat. So if you want to take the floor and ask a question, please just raise the hand and take the floor after I give you this way we have the most seamless debate. I would be curious, so you were talking about the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, and the different measures that are taken within the communitarian level in Europe. Mm-hmm. And like here, I'm talking from my own point of view as youth. How do you take into account, for instance, revendication for other countries, for instance, Argentina or others, who are saying that the fact that we have so many subsidies in Europe, we are actually being detrimental to the global ecosystems because they do monocultures in order to compete with the prices that Europe is actually just subsidizing. I'm getting very political, I'm sorry. I think that's also the question of the event. So I'm getting in there because that's a question I would ask as a youth, not moderate.
Okay, let me give you a longer answer here, because we're in the middle. Well, first of all, we have realized that our food systems are in many ways broken. We know that food in Europe is the #1 cause of non-communicable diseases. We know that farmers are not being rewarded enough for what they produce, that there is a big difference between the value of food and the price of food. And we know that food is not as healthy nor as cheap as consumers would need it to be. So there's a big sea change that's trying to happen in the, and that is not even taking into consideration the role of climate action and the climate crisis in the food system, which is in the very tragic situation where both it needs to reduce its contribution to climate change and also adapt to the already happening climate change. So the food systems now are very, very, very vulnerable. On top of that, we are in the middle of revolutionizing the common agricultural policy from a policy that is mainly aimed at making sure that farmers have enough economic reward so that they stay in the countryside. Now we're looking at the policy which aims to produce healthy food, healthy and affordable food for all, and also reward justly the producers, and also contribute to biodiversity, to the stop of biodiversity loss and climate change. This is now what used to be a very close discussion between farmers and countries is now open to consumers and other policies. This is shown very clearly by the fact that for the first time we have two policies from different directorates, from DG Santé, from DG which is about health, and this is the farm to fork strategy, and also from the environment, the biodiversity policy, which need to be taken into account by the CAP. So we have a huge change here. And what you're talking about, there's a very big discussion going on now about the trade agreements. On the one hand, the subsidies that the European Union pays to European farmers is in many ways misdirected towards continuing a monocultural industrial system of agriculture, which needs to change. And at the same time, there needs to be, we need to take into account in terms of importing food, we need to make sure that the food we import does not support climate change, biodiversity loss, or and also respects labor laws, and it doesn't come from slave labor or child labor or all that. So this is really a time of tremendous change, as it is, of course, in all sectors, but specifically in the agricultural sphere, this is a time of tremendous change. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but there's a very big push, which is unheard of in the Agricultural Committee, from the environment, from social organizations, to make sure that food is fair. So this is not only about, of course, Europe. This is about the global food, the global food system, especially the China and the United States. And that's why we're looking at the results now of the United Nations Food Summit system and try to integrate them into the national plans for the Common Agricultural Policy.
Thank you so much. I see Emma Aristeno, you have a question. Please take the floor.
Yes, I had a question. I will take the opportunity since we are struggling to get the participants back. I was just wondering, because I think Anastasia mentioned that you are going to go to the COP26. And I was just wondering if you could share a bit more the behind the scenes of what are the objectives for the EP delegations and what you will be doing there, you know, in terms of negotiations maybe, and meetings and side events, this kind of things.
Well, as members of the Parliament who are going to be present in the COP, we are going to try to exert some sort of, let's say, diplomatic effort to showcase the European leadership and our commitment towards moving into a zero carbon world. Now, COP26 and all COPs is only about the part of CO2 emissions about circular economy. We understand this is it's one and the same thing. It's not about the SDGs, but it's about the CO2 emissions. So the European Union has voted the climate law very recently, which commits the European Union by law to climate neutrality by 2050. So what we will be doing is trying to push our commitment, our enthusiasm for the possibility of a democratic and just transition towards a zero carbon economy, how we believe that this is going to be a huge opportunity for better jobs, how it's going to be how important that is. So we are not as Parliament active in any kind of negotiation. We will just have bilateral meetings with a great number of organizations and towards this transition. Now, the role of Europe in this transition is to push forward a just transition, to push forward a democratic way towards the transition, because of course now everybody really understands that we need to become climate neutral, but I'm sure that President Biden and President Xi Jinping have very different ways of going about it. So we want to export and we want to promote the idea of leaving no one behind in this transition.
Thank you, MEP Kokkalis. Building on this question, so you were saying that you are trying to get that social inclusion into the discussion of environmental change, and in our case, we are more discussing food systems, but how do you deal personally with, because you were saying that you come into contact with farmers, you come into contact with different actors, how do you canalize all those different opinions? How do you channel them into actual law? Because, for instance, one of the topic of conversation we had this morning with the youth that were involved is that we have so many options. We are collecting them. We are building this consensus-oriented platform in order to go from bottom to top and to leave to policymakers that last decision to put it into law. But how do you, on a daily basis, use this dialogue, channeling difference of opinion to actually put them into a lawmaking, in a law?
Well, you have to understand that the European Parliament is it's almost like a federal parliament. It stands above the national states, and it creates European law, which then the member states have to translate into actual national law and national practice. So what our job is to make sure that we push for inclusion, that we push for a procedure which is bottom up. We push for all kinds of decisions to arrive after proper deliberation with all stakeholders. This is the case also with the common agricultural policy and strategic plans of the member states on how they're going to materialize and implement the common agricultural policy. But that, of course, is up to the member states to do. For example, in my country, this dialogue, which was supposed to include everybody, to include the farmers, villagers, consumers, and so on, it's really very much restricted to the, let's say,
Mr. Kokkalis, I'm sorry, your connection has been a little bad. Can you please
bodies.
last sentence?
I'm not speaking Russian, am I?
No, you are not speaking Russian, but your connection kind of made you unclear. I think that's the case also for many participants. Thank God it's not another language, but just not very clear. Could you please go back on the last paragraph of what you were saying, please?
Yes, I was saying that, for example, in my country, despite the regulation being clear on how wide and deep the deliberation, the public deliberation for arriving at the national plan should be, it's not. It's been used in a business as usual matter, in a way that is restricted to the very formal organizations of representatives of regions and so on, and it fails to understand that in this transition, if it's going to be successful, it needs to include everybody, and to include everybody means that they need to be included in the design, in the deliberation, and from day number one. So we have mixed results in different member states. I guess that my country is a bad example. Yeah.
Sorry, I guess my country, and you kind of got lost. I'm sorry.
I guess my country is a bad example. It's not the best practice here.
Okay, so I see that a lot of new people have actually joined us, contrary to before. So just to remind you of the space we're in, you can just raise your hand and take the floor to ask a question. Right now, we are discussing the topic of how to get consensus to get the dialogue, for instance, with farmers, with different stakeholders into a law. And the parliamentarian, the European Parliament style of lawmaking is federal, so a lot of different stakes. So if you want to build on this discussion, please feel free to jump in. If not, don't hesitate to actually just pop a question in the chat or by raising your hand. And here we go, first question. Wensi, please, you have the floor.
Sure, thanks. So I have actually a more specific question. So when it comes to climate and agriculture, for individual actions, it's actually very hard for consumers to do so much research about climate effect prior to each grocery visit. So buying food or buying any product sometimes feels like a moral dilemma. And we'll talk about food literacy and education and awareness raising, of course. But I'm wondering if there's any possibility, let's say, to make all the information available in a more easy way. Like we have the chart for nutrition on food packaging, right? Is there any agenda to make something like a sustainable labeling? Thanks, that's my question.
Thank you. That's a great question, and that's what we're actually trying to push, because on the next year we're going to have a regulation on front of food labeling, front of package labeling, which is extremely controversial. Now, this discussion has been up to now shortened, let's say, or limited to the nutritional value of food, which of course is extremely important. But we are pushing precisely to find a way to make a very clear and very simple signal of the environmental and social footprint of the food that one is buying. This is not very easy to do because, of course, it's also an issue of dieting. For example, in terms of nutrition, something may be good in small portions, but terrible in large portions if you eat it every day. But this is what we're pushing, to include a European in the European labeling, the environmental and social footprints. And hopefully we'll be having this discussion by the first quarter of the next year.
Thank you so much. And building on, I don't see any follow-up question. I would be curious, how do you deal as lawmakers with disruptive, for instance, startups or innovation models? For instance, I am from France. I'm currently living in France. We have this app called Yuka that is telling you basically both where your food comes from, but also if it has pesticides, if it has some nitrates or different things. I think those actors exist in various countries and are being disruptive in this way of such a regulation. How do you have a dialogue with them, and how do you respond also to, as lawmakers, to the other people who are not so happy about their existence?
We are generally very much in favor of innovation and general disruption because we very well realize that this transition that we've been talking about is depends on innovation. It depends on technology not yet invented. It depends on behaviors not yet invented. It depends on politics not yet invented. So we realize that we need to encourage innovation, and I think in general we do. We have our ears very much open to obstacles that may be due to regulation in allowing this disruption to move forward. But I think that in general we have a very good ear, and we expect to see more things. Of course, we are not, we can be innovators in terms of regulation, but it's not our job, and we're not expected to, to know what is going to happen in the innovation space. But an application like the one you described is very useful to consumers, and we're trying to make our regulation as broad as possible as to allow space for innovation. We have a lot of pressure. For example, we had a big fight on the issue of, for example, the names that can be used for non-meat alternatives. If you can call a plant-based protein product, let's say a sausage or a burger, and we had huge, let's say, pressure from the people who are doing it by meat. But I think that we got all this through, and we're really going out of our way to make space for everything that's needed in this transition.
Thank you. I really invite the audience, if you want to just jump in. If not, I will continue my line of thoughts. Thank you for this dialogue in the end and this conversation anyway. I'm wondering how young people can reach you, for instance. If we go back to young people in this case, let's say we had like an innovation platform just Saturday. There were awards challenging young researchers presenting projects. If they were to reach out to you, how would they make it, and how could they interact with you in order to have proposition? Or even further on, how would the World Food Forum reach out to an MEP in order to implement something?
Well, at this level, individual reaching out doesn't really make sense. So we need to find the proper, let's say, reception points in the Parliament and in the European Union to get in touch. So the very first thing for young people is to get involved, to participate in forums such as the one that you're having today, and then make sure that the results of this dialogue arrive at spaces like, for example, our European Food Forum or the FAO Parliamentary Alliance Against Hunger, so that you don't have to reach out to individual MEPs, which of course is always open and available, but you can also look at the very various groupings that exist within the Parliament, intergroups or interest groups. Then you can, the best way to get in touch with us is through them. But to get in touch, you have to first get involved, and what you're doing here is fantastic.
I would like to invite everyone to check out the links that were shared in order for you to know a little bit more about these institutions. Generally speaking, if you want to get involved with the World Food Forum, we are creating mechanisms in order for you to take part and to join the conversation. Just after this session, we will have many different presentation of more in-depth discussion of the Youth Assembly of the World Food Forum. So for you who are watching and who will be watching this a little bit later, please don't hesitate to get involved. I see that we are running short on time. So what I'm doing is opening the floor to last question if someone has them in the audience, as we are unfortunately have been cut short, and it wasn't really as let's say, we had a lot of things happening in the beginning, slowing us down. But please, I would like, if the audience has another question, not to let this opportunity pass. Please don't hesitate. If not, I would like you, maybe Mr. Kokkalis, to do a small conclusion about what you like to see from youth and youth transforming the agri-food systems currently.
Not going to be an easy transition. It's going to be a hard one. It's going to take, it's going to be very difficult to come about to where we need to be. But I think that it is from the youth that the conviction that this change needs to be done, that everything is driven, because in the end of the day, it is the youth are going to live in this world, which we're trying to create. So my not, let's say, advice, but my call to you is to keep involved, keep staying active, keep pushing your elected officials, keep pushing any kind of organization that you belong to, and keep focused on the goal, keep focused on the need to create a safe and clean and better world in the end of the day, because really this is the fight of your generation. And myself and a very large number of my colleagues are very much on your side, and we're here but we need your energy. We need you on the streets. We need you out on the organizations. We need you in the dialogues. We need you to push and keep your eyes focused on the goal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kokkalis. The session will conclude now, as we had a small dialogue, but at least we covered so many topics. Thank you so much for your time. For the people joining us, please continue to watch the different segments of the World Food Forum. We have the youth assembly continuing on from 16 on, so 4 p.m. CET. Please join us, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokkalis, and everybody for your patience and motivation to go on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I will stop the recording now, and then I will close.